How's it going, everyone? This is Leo from TrustedSec. I'm a senior IR consultant. Um, and yeah, I'll be talking about how building a threat hunting program. Usually this is like a week-long class, but I'm gonna try to condense it into 30 minutes. So I'll do the best I can. But this will give you a great foundation how not only build a threat hunting program, but have the maturity level and have the sustainability to mature your threat hunting program. So it's not just about implementing tools, not just about what's the best tool for threat hunting. It's about have a sustainable program and you want to mature it and be a successful program in the long term. So this is what this talk is about. Okay. So, yep, right there is our fearless leader, Dave Kennedy. Some of you might know him. He's kind of a big deal, but he's our fearless leader and he's an awesome person. I love Dave Kennedy. Who am I? Like I said, I'm an IR consultant. I specialize in threat hunting. We do a lot of threat hunting engagements, but I'm not a salesperson. As you can see me, I don't fit the criteria of being a salesperson. I can't sell anything for the life of me. So don't think I'm a salesperson at all. I come from the DoD space, which is Department of Defense, U.S. Army for over a decade. Did some cool stuff there, from threat hunting to threat intelligence to operational stuff. Born and raised in Los Angeles, but currently in Austin. Have a bunch of certs, but do they really matter? And let's see, some interesting stuff about me before we get started. I speak 3 languages, and I build my own keyboards. So that's about it. So let's get right into it. So here's a general overview. What we're going to be talking about. So the threat hunting building overview. We conduct engagements with clients, and everything we advise is either free or low cost. It's nothing vendor specific. It's vendor agnostic. So this is definitely not a sales pitch for any tools. We usually do a formal threat hunt process development guidance. We do a guidance for threat hunting processes. We do infrastructure review. We do operational threat hunting development and how to mature and evaluate your threat hunting program. How do you know a successful criteria? How do you know you're doing threat hunting correctly and bringing value back into your organization? So here's a quick overview. Usually we do it in 5 phases, and you can bring this back to your organization. Phase 1 usually does a deep dive in the environment, developing baselines, getting to know your environment, because you can't threat hunt unless you know what's normal in your environment, correct? Phase 2 and 3, we gradually build on top of our infrastructure environment review. We usually build into operational threat hunting. So we don't go off the bat and start threat hunting right away in operational. No, first we got to know the environment. First we got to see what we're working with, what kind of data we have. Then we start slowly, gradually building into operational threat hunting activities. And see, phase 4 usually is a full day exercise of threat hunting, and like a live fire exercise in the military, right? To use the military jargon, which I've been told not to use military jargon. So, and then phase 5 is usually it's kind of like catch-all. Phase 5 usually is the day we cover anything that people had questions on, maybe something developed in during the first 4 phases, where we want to expand on the 5th phase, and we get feedback, receive feedback, and give a quick analysis of what we saw during the week. So phase 1, let's go over phase 1. Phase 1 is a high level overview of, we usually do a security infrastructure review. We do asset management, login overview. We identify critical data. But so let me go break down into what's a security infrastructure review. This is usually phase 1. What do we do with infrastructure review? Usually we want to review all deployed security solutions currently in the environment. So that is the first step, because that's going to tell you what kind of data you're grabbing, where your choke points are. You want to identify potential gaps so you know how you want to develop your hypothesis in threat hunting. So you want to see where all your security solutions are and what kind of data they're capturing, correct? Then we also do where the geographical separated offices are at. That could be a big deal in the threat hunts, because it'll show you how dispersed your units or your offices are at. We do review the cloud environment. That's another data analysis you want to do for infrastructure review. What kind of data cloud environments do you have in your infrastructure? And you want to identify external exposure as well during the infrastructure review, because you want when you develop your hypothesis in a threat hunt, and that's proven true or false, your question, right? You want to see what kind of external exposure, because that is an attack vector that you're going to be facing day to day. So then we do asset management review. We want to map our assets to IP addresses. You want to, and you want to know what's critical in your environment. So we do an asset management review. They call it the crown jewel exercise or analysis. We do a login overview. What type of data are you currently ingesting from your analytics? Where is it going to? How long is it stored? Was it retention? So we like to do a login overview to see what currently is in the environment. And let's see, we usually go over servers, endpoints, and network data logging mechanisms. Oops, there we go. And let's see here. Oh, my video just went out. That's weird. Okay. And then we do identify critical assets and data points. That goes to the crown jewel exercise. And then we do critical data points, key subnets, key VLANs. You want to identify key systems, web application, and critical databases, correct? So that's part of the critical data and key points. And then you want to verify access, usually into whatever SIM or console you have available. And then from there, you want to do an audit or a review of your current threat hunting program, if there is one. Usually, I like to piggyback off incident response or BCT, business continuity or contingency, and disaster recovery. I like to piggyback off their guidance and because they already have a pretty good policy set out. And we can piggyback off that SOP or that policy or guidance and use that for our threat hunts. So that's one things we like to do. So what's phase 2, right? So that was phase 1. And that's usually, admin paperwork. It's not the sexy part of threat hunting, right? It's the review, the policies, the admin paperwork. Usually the boring stuff, and people want to get right into threat hunting, but this is about building a successful program. So that's why we do, and it's critical. It's boring, I admit, but it's critical to having a successful, mature program in the long run. And all these slides and expanded sections, which are not shown here, because it's a lot of information. It breaks down in subcategories of every bullet point I have will be linked. I'll give the link to Joe, and Joe will link it either on Twitter or on my GitHub. So what's phase 2? So we did phase 1. We did the admin work. We did the boring stuff, right? But necessary. So phase 2, we go over different threat hunt methodologies, right? So what's that? What does that look like? Or hypothesis based. A hypothesis. So one framework or one guidance of going over a threat hunt is hypothesis based. You try to prove something true or false in your environment. Is hypothesis driven, and usually is triggered by intelligence. And you want to say, I want to prove or disprove lateral movement is going on in my environment with Mimi cats. Just an example. So you want to prove that true and false, and that's hypothesis based. But people gotta realize, even if a hypothesis comes out to be false, that doesn't mean it was unsuccessful. That means that you can bring that analysis back to your security operations, and you can operationalize that intelligence that you just created for the SecOps team. So even if you don't prove something is true, even though APT 100 isn't in your environment and you can't find them, you have a bunch of hypotheses, and you can bring back in security operations. So that's what hypothesis based. It should be based on observations of what you see in your environment or past incidents. And people that work in your environment day to day, so security analysts, they have a pretty good idea of what to look for because they know what's normal, they know previous incidents, and they can help you out with building hypotheses. There's also an investigation-based methodology, a threat hunt methodology on known indicators. So that's a good one. That's investigation-based on known indicators. You want to leverage your tactical threat intelligence and extract known indicators, and you can hunt. This is what the traditional hunting with IOCs is. But if anybody's familiar with the pyramid of pain, it has the the different indicators of how hard it is and how easy it is for the adversary to change up they call it TTPs, correct? And the bottom is IPs and hashes of different files, and it's real easy to change, correct? People can use they can change their hash with changing one bit. The whole chat hash changes, correct? On the file, or IP, they can use flash flux, they can use dynamic DNS, and IPs will be changing like crazy every few minutes, correct? So that's why investigation based on unknown indicators is not as good as hypothesis based as far as threat hunting goes. In my opinion, this is my personal opinion. But you also want to define your IOCs and investigation based, and the different alerts will create further investigations for your security operation teams. And the last threat hunt methodology that we go over is usually awareness based. So this is called a crown jewel exercise or analysis, CJA, and this is usually what's your secret sauce? What does the business care about the most? And that's what the adversary is going to go after. And that's what you're going to build your threat hunt based on, is your crown jewel exercise. Something you care about the most, either PII, or HPI. So whatever, or your IP, some secret sauce. That's what you care about, and that's what the adversary. You can theorize that's what the adversary cares about. Your blueprint to a secret car or something, right? So that's the last threat hunt methodology. Also, then after that, we like to go over red team frameworks. We like to, and this is brought up by my good friend and teammate Justin Villacaro. He loves to go over red team frameworks, and I'm an advocate of it as well. That you want to know how red team adversaries and threat groups work and what kind of life cycle they use. And if you're knowledgeable on their frameworks and their kind of like the processes, you can build a better threat hunt hypothesis based on their different life cycles, from initial attack vector all the way to deployment to command and control. So we like to go over red team frameworks a lot because we want to know what the offensive teams are doing. Just situational awareness, correct? And then we use, of course, MITRE ATT&CK, buzzword. If you're doing a drinking game on buzzwords of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, that one's pretty big. We like to go over the different avenues and matrix of the MITRE ATT&CK is a good baseline. And then we go over threat hunt strategies. Usually, most people threat hunt, what do? They do like an ad hoc or on-demand threat hunt, correct? So usually somebody brings up, management comes up to you and asks, I want you to hunt. We saw this last week. Can you hunt for P as exec through your environment? Because we saw P as exec last week and it was a malicious indicator. Okay, so that was an on-demand, and we like to move from ad hoc on-demand to operation threat hunt. Operational threat hunting is something on a recurring cadence, recurring schedule, say weekly, monthly, or quarterly, versus being reactive and someone bringing to you, can you hunt for this for another environment? We want to move away from that and move into operational, so that way you can have a successful program, correct? And let's go. Am I good on time? Oh, wow. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Phase 3. So that was phase 2. So phase 2, we go over frameworks, the different methodologies. We try to move from the on-demand ad hoc threat hunting to operational, which is on a recurring basis. And we go over the different strategies. And then we also like to look at the security dashboards, because you want to start off from one central location and pivot from there. Usually we look at your dashboards. So what's the next phase that you can bring back to your organization to have a successful threat hunting program? The high level recap of phase 3 is we do a lot of APT group threat intelligence gathering, because that's going to help you develop your processes, and it's going to push you towards what you want to look for in your environment. There's going to be specific threat groups that are going to target either your industry or you specifically. So you want to bring in threat intelligence either from open source, free or paid services. You want to gather some type of intelligence because you want to follow the trends of your industry, because that's what's going to be targeting you. If you haven't been targeted yet, it's just a matter of time, or you just don't know it. And that's the beauty of threat hunting, is being proactive, not being reactionary, correct? So we like to do APT threat intelligence gathering. So use all available resources to your advantage that you have available. There's a lot of great resources, the ISACs for different industries and sectors, or just sharing threat sharing groups, invite or open public. I like to look at companies with the same within the same industry that have already been targeted by certain groups. I like to look at them and use that to help me develop my hypothesis for my threat hunt in my environment and whatever environment I'm working in. So that's how you can leverage threat intelligence. And so I'm not going to give my spill on threat intelligence, but yeah, so I'll leave it at that. You want to identify how to build a cyclical process of detection lifecycle. So detection, it goes hand in hand with threat hunting, because when you do your threat hunting program, or you actually do a threat hunt, you want to somehow bring back those findings into your security operations. And one of the ways to do that is building a detection for whatever hunting, for whatever hunting that you did from your environment. You want to build a detection that is going to get ingested into your security operations, either as an alert, or filtering something out as white noise, or however you want to do it. You want to bring that detection that you did, that query that you did during your threat hunt, into your security operations, because that's part of how you're going to show a return on investment on a threat hunt. You're going to be helping out security operations. And one of the ways is detection. I know Palantir has a ADS framework. The ADS framework is on GitHub. It's free. It's just a framework of how to build a detection, like a detection system, adversary detection system. And everything is free or open source, and just how you build detections out of your threat hunt is what it is. And we tweaked it, and we use that for our own environments. You also want to go over how the SOC, or if your security operations go over their incident response procedures. You want to identify what to get alerted on, because a threat hunt is going to end up helping out security operations a lot. And so you want to see what kind of alerts are they currently being alerted on. Let's see. You also want to go over the IR process. Your threat hunt might kick off an incident. So you want to get an incident response plan in place before you start a threat hunt, because otherwise everything is going to be a dumpster fire. Every find you find, every misconfiguration you find, and you're going to find a lot of them, everything's going to be a fire. So you want to have a process in place for incident response, mitigation, remediation before you kick off your threat hunt, because you are going to find 90% of the time misconfigurations, but you're also going to find some incidents, and you don't want everything to be a fire, because the administrative overhead is going to be a nightmare. Everything's going to be an incident response. So you want to develop that incident response policy before you kick off a threat hunt. You also want to work on a threat hunting program plan. You want to have a strategic threat hunt program plan that's pretty granular and structured, but the actual threat hunt is going to be fluid, and there's not going to be no correct or wrong way of how doing a threat hunt. It has to be fluid, based on observation, based on your different crown jewel analysis exercises on just different threat intelligence. So the actual operation threat hunt is going to be very fluid, but you also want to develop a structured policy on threat hunting. And that's how your threat hunting program is going to survive. You have that strong policy for management, and a strong structure of giving you a time frame of when you conduct threat hunts. But when you actually do operational threat hunt, it want to be fluid. You want to move, pivot at will, because when you do a threat hunt, you're going to discover a lot of hidden cobwebs that you never seen before, and you want to be fluid and pivot and use your experience and intuition and institutional knowledge to pivot and develop a hypothesis. So that's part of phase 4. You want to plan out, and this is important, you want to plan out measurable metrics for reporting, because this is how you show value in your threat hunt to management. Because you're going to threat hunt and you're going to find nothing evil. You're not going to find APT 9000 in your environment, and management is going to come back and ask you, why are we threat hunting? We're not finding anything evil. Well, you want to develop some type of successful criteria, some type of matrix reporting where it shows what value you're bringing back to your organization. So I went over the detection creation or detection ADS framework from Planeteer, and that's a way of showing value to your management. And the reporting is very important. It's boring. Trust me, I know it's boring. I'm not very good at report writing, but it might be as important or more important as an actual threat hunt, because you need to show value. You need to show how you bring back that return investment, that time you're taking threat hunting, and show management the return investment is worth it. So we help you with that, and all this is open source and free. Like nothing is tool specific, correct? So none of this is going to cost you to bring back to your organization. And when I publish my slides, it's going to break down every bullet point into actual actionable processes. But in 30 minutes, I just can't give the whole 1 week spill, correct? Let's see. So that was phase 4. And then, that was phase 3. Phase 4. This is when we actually finally threat hunt. So all that was paperwork, was research, was building hypotheses, was setting the policies up in place, was doing the administrative work, doing the policy work, the strategic work. in the back end, so your threat hunting program can survive, can mature, and be a full blown uh successful threat hunting program in the future. This is what this is about. It's not about having a tool and a silver bullet. Deploy Sysmon and deploy OSquery, and you're good to go. You have a threat hunting program. Yes, that's threat hunting, but your program is not going to survive, and it's not going to be mature, and the processes are going to be out of whack. So that's why we did those first 3 phases. And in phase 4, we finally pull everything together that we did before, all the research, and actually start threat hunting, which is just a full day of threat hunting of your, whatever console you use, whatever sim you use, whatever you have to leverage, your threat hunts. It could be PowerShell. You can threat hunt with PowerShell, or if you have an EDR, you can use that as well. So this is finally we get to the operational cool stuff. And I wish I can show you an operational threat hunt here, but everybody has a different console. Everybody has a different sim. Everybody has different tools in their environment. And we just don't have enough time today. So when you put it all together, operational threat hunting, this is when you work off your hypothesis. Whatever method you use, awareness-based, observation-based, indicator-based, threat intelligence-based, crown jewel exercise, whatever hypothesis method you use, this is where you put it to work. This is where you finally start hunting through your environment and hunt and try to stay on your hypothesis the best you can, but you go and pivot. So usually from phase 1, the hypothesis we build on phase 1, in phase 4, we finally start threat hunting. You also want to pivot to other internal tools for additional analysis. And you also want to use open source intelligence to your advantage. You want to leverage that for external threat awareness, situational awareness specific to your industry. That's going to help you build your hypothesis. And you also want to, this is the part when you want to work out the kinks in when you do have findings. Your remediation plan, your incident response plan gets put into effect. This is where you want to work out, because like I said, you don't want every finding to be a fire. So this is where you kind of set a threshold, where you set a criteria of, okay, what is a full-blown incident? What goes into change control? What goes into a remediation? Goes to the remediation team? What goes to the win intel team? This is where you work out your processes of your findings and misconfigurations. Most of the time, you're gonna find misconfigs in your environment. And then phase 5. Phase 5 is usually the catch-all. Phase 5 is usually, oops, I missed a slide. So phase 5 is usually the feedback portion. Usually when anything in the first 4 phases that came up, and this is where we expand on it. This is where we take in feedback. You want to give feedback and ask questions. And this is where the part of where threat hunting is very fluid and dynamic, where the first 4 phases is very structured. So like the strategic portion, the policy management portion is structured, but the actual operational threat hunting is very fluid, and you want to move with the observations and the observables that you see in your environment during your threat hunt. You want to move with that. So you gotta be very flexible. And this is where the phase 5 is when you start verifying knowledge transfer of the threat hunt teams. Say you just have one person threat hunting. Usually in a lot of organizations, okay, you're the person, you're the man or woman doing the threat hunt. Build this program or start threat hunting. You want to augment your team with incident responders, security operation analysts, maybe once a quarter, once a month. And you want to verify that knowledge transfer, or be able to give a knowledge transfer to those analysts, because you also want to help the analysts not only help you in your threat hunt, but you also want them give them the knowledge when they go back to security operations, they can have that knowledge from the threat hunts for their instant response, and vice versa. So when they come back to your team, they're a little bit more knowledgeable. So this is where you verify knowledge transfer within your team. Also on phase 5 is usually where we obtain feedback from the receiving team, whoever the receiving team is. So in your internal team, you develop your threat hunting program and you start taking feedback. You give a class to your internal team. You want to get feedback from them on phase 5, usually. Either you also want to identify a cadence here in phase 5. You want to set a plan in motion. You're not going to develop the whole threat hunt program in 1 week, but you want to set up a cadence or a regularly scheduled threat hunt, either on a weekly basis, which more mature programs. There's a hunting maturity model out there in the wild. It was put out by, I want to say, I got to get a link to that and source it, but I want to say David Bianco. He did Pyramid and Pain. I'm not sure if he did the hunting maturity model, but there's different stages of your hunting program. The hunting maturity model, HSM 1, 2, 3, and 4. Usually, the more mature programs do a weekly scheduled threat hunt. Most will do monthly or quarterly, and yeah. So that's phase 5. And then the hunting maturity model. Okay, I have a link. I'll have to link it. And that's it. That's all I have. And some of you might know me from on Twitter by CyberGoat Psyops. It's a reference to my Army job. If anybody knows, they'll get us, DM me and they'll get a surprise. They'll get some swag, Trusted Sec swag. If everybody knows the meaning of CyberGoat Psyops. But that's all I have. Open up for questions.
Hey, thanks. That was awesome. I've got a couple of things, but there's some items that were posted in chat. First one, what's your favorite on the network toolbox platform for, I'm assuming, threat hunting? So a Kali thumb drive, Mac plus toolbox drive, or something else?
Hold on. Am I still sharing?
You're sharing your desktop right now.
Oh. Oh, man. Okay, let me stop sharing and then.
Here, I can kill that for you if you want.
Yeah, kill it for me. Let me turn on my video. I feel like an old man when it comes to Zoom because I don't know how to work this thing.
It's all good. There's like 15 different platforms out there or whatever these days, so it's all good.
So I'm a big fan of open source. This is me personally. This is not Trusted Sec. This is me personally. How's it going, everybody? I want to say hello to my brothers and sisters in Europe. Well wishes. But okay, so favorite threat hunting platform. So I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a vendor loyalist or anything like that. But I'm a big fan of Security Onion. We implement I've seen people implement a network tap with Security Onion and in a choke point, and right there you're gathering all your data. I'm hoping that's the question they're asking. Is there's something it's like Rock NSM as well, which is very similar to Security Onion, and you just plug that into your spam port, your mirror port, and you start gathering data. A few additional steps, but big fan of anything that's free or open source. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And kind of a follow-up to that, or at least from the same person. So documentation and collaboration, what do you use? Like, hard copy, pen and paper documentation, collaborative documents, or, how do you keep track of these things?
Sure. We do OneNote or Word, online Word, but I use the Hive in the past. That's worked very well in the past for me. But I had problems expanding that into a large enterprise, but in a small team for collaborative effort, the Hive is also free and open source as well. Like I said, I'm not a salesperson, as you can tell. I can't sell anything. I can't sell ice to the desert. But the Hive is a great one for collaborative efforts, but just realize that I run into personally scale problems on large enterprises with the Hive. But for documentation, OneNote, share it online with your team, and yeah.
Yeah, and I'll do +1 on the Hive. Also, like mostly
I
for
love the
side
Hive.
projects and other things. Yeah, exactly. It's really good, but yeah, I can see how it might not scale the best if you're getting into really large enterprises. So I think that's it from the chat. So I'm going to ask a question if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things that always trips me up when developing hunting hypotheses or what to look for. I mean, it sounds like Trusted Second yourself personally take a very intelligence-driven approach, but there's also the question of like, okay, how much should you worry or include the theoretical or things that are maybe not in the wild actual threat actor use, but are sort of red team or DEF CON presentation, that sort of activity? Do you think that's worthwhile bringing into a threat hunt activity, or because it's not actually being displayed by real adversaries yet, that it's better to focus resources on the state of the now?
Oh no, for sure. We go over. I go. And my buddy Justin Vilcaro, a senior at Trusted Sec, he loves going over red team frameworks because usually red teams are more advanced than maybe not advanced APT groups, but like the low level threat actors. Red teams are way more advanced than them because low level threat actors usually using the low hanging fruit, whatever works, spray and pray and whatever works, that's what they're going to use. But red teams, we do go over red team frameworks from, presentation from Black Hat, DEF CON. We use a C2 matrix for brand new updated command control by the red team. We definitely use what's being researched by red team, and we have an internal red team as well and Trusted Sec, and they're awesome. Carlos Perez and his team, they have an awesome research and development, and definitely anything that the red team frameworks or red teamers are using, it's important. Maybe, and it depends on your environment. It might not be the most important. I would say previous incidents and targeted APT groups to your sector is very important. But we also incorporate red team frameworks for sure from researchers throughout the world. Yeah, for sure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, because I think that's always a if you try and cover everything, you can't do that, or at least
No,
it's going
no
to
way.
take you a long time. So yeah,
No
it's
way.
like you try and set up different levels of priority. Like, okay, targeted threat actors that are in my sector, like, okay, highest priority. I want to make sure I have coverage for that. Then, okay, targeted threat actors, the state of the now, or whatever's going on in ransomware. And then, like, okay, as we've got resources, like, okay, what's on the horizon? What are the researchers talking about right now? And try and get as much coverage as you can around all of that while prioritizing to what you're most likely to see.
For sure, and that's part of the part of the threat hunting life cycle of being fluid and moving with the industry and following trends. For sure, and that's part of it, and that's why you want to develop a program where you're ingesting and following trends from the industry, but not only the industry, also from red teamers and researchers and threat hunters throughout the world, like Roberto Rodriguez and Dragos. A lot of research they do. They're cutting edge, or they're seeing it in their environments as well. So you definitely want to leverage everything you can, and that's why threat hunting is not just going out and looking for PS exec and or just deploying the tool and that's it, you're threat hunting. That's why you want to develop a policy and guideline and guidance. That way you can start ingesting all the information out there, and you can focus on what priorities you want to look at. What do you care about the most? Do you have a previous incident, a previous group that targeted you? So obviously they'll take the highest priority if you have a previous incident or you're a previous targeted, which a lot of organizations do, but you don't want to stop there. Like you said, you want to follow the trends, and you want to have a management policy of how somebody can come into your threat hunting team and do that. How do you follow trends? Where do you look at? Who do you follow on Twitter? Twitter's a great intelligence tool, right? You just have to filter out the noise. Who do you follow on Twitter? Who's doing cutting edge threat? Like Roberto Rodriguez from, I think he's in Microsoft now. He's doing cutting edge stuff. there's a lot of people out there doing cutting edge threat hunting. And threat hunt, a lot of people know this. Usually a part of the intelligence team. It's nice to have a good backbone intelligence team on there because they can feed you information. They can follow the trends for you. They can follow the correct people. They can see what's being looked in the wild, and you can focus more on your threat hunt using that information from the intelligence team. But if you don't have that tool or those people in place, it's going to be up to you to follow those trends, to follow. But like you said, there's no way you can follow everything that's going on. But like Justin says, if you know what the offense team is doing, you can better detect them or you can better hunt for them. So he's a big advocate of that.
Yep. No, that sounds good. And since we're also waiting on Monte to show up, we have a little bit of time here. A friend of mine, Bob Morgan, wrote an essay in chat. So let me try and parse this a little bit.
Okay.
It's all good, Bob. I love you, man.
Thanks, Bob.
Let's see. Try to get this briefly. So nailed it in the moving to on-demand threat hunt, looking for items ad hoc to get the operational threat hunt is where it's at. But immediate mitigations always become the priority and can pull your hunters away from the proactive hunt. So I guess one part of that. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So I might have talked too quickly on this subject, but I did go over it on the slides. That's part of where the policy comes into play by leadership. Whoever's leading either the threat hunt team, usually it won't be the threat hunt lead that leads the policy change. Usually it should be whoever's in charge of the threat hunt team. Usually the intelligence director, usually the VP, whoever's in charge of the sub team of threat hunting. They should develop a policy of when you do have a finding, which most of the time is going to be a misconfiguration, or if it is incident, how do you handle it? So a policy should be in place. And I think I said this, you should have a policy, a remediation plan in place, an incident response plan in place specific to threat hunts. That way, not everything will be a dumpster fire. Like you said, a threat hunter is going to get pulled from the incident or from the threat hunt and try to remediate or respond to that incident. And this is where the policy portion comes into play. And that's why we like to spend so much time on policy building to have a successful program. Because if you're taking threat hunting analysts away from the threat hunts to remediate a Windows server, that takes away value from the threat hunting program. And that's why we want to give this talk. That's why we develop our phases the way we do, because we all been through this. I was in a threat hunt team under the U.S. Army, and they have a policy for everything, how to wash your hands. So, but it helps out because you won't get pulled from certain engagements. And yes, so that's where the policy comes into play. You want to be real specific in your strategic policy of how you handle remediation, mitigation, and incident response, and make sure you highlight that you don't pull the threat hunting analysts away from this threat hunt, and have point of contacts, key leaders of who responds to those incidents, the incident commander. And that's part of the policy building for a threat hunt. It's part of how you had a successful program.
Okay. Oh, we got Monte on. Okay, so that worked out at least. So that's good. Got time for one quick one. What maturity models would you recommend for hunting? You mentioned one. Are there others?
Yeah, so we use the hunting maturity model, and let me link it here. Let me see. So the hunting maturity model, I'm going to put it in chat. Let's see here to all attendees. So big fan of this one from Squirrel, from the now defunct Squirrel team, who are in AWS, I believe now. Lot of great analysts, a lot of great people from the defunct Squirrel team. They wrote on a hunting maturity model. This is the main one I use. There's some other ones on threathunting.net that I haven't used personally. And DoD has some specific ones in our regulations from the old school old school analysts from the 90s. You know, they outline some hunting maturity models, but this is the main one that I put in chat. That's the one I like to use, and from there you like to pivot. If you go to threadhunting.net, it is a project from the old Squirrel team where they publish all their blog posts and articles, and there's some other hunting maturity models there as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have the link right now, but yeah.
It's all good. So with that, I'm going to cut you off just so we can kind of keep on schedule or whatever, but that was great. Thank you. Lots of good engagement, lots of good information there. So yeah, really appreciate you coming on and Trusted Sec for letting you do this. So awesome.
Yep. Wash your hands. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
So with that, we're